2 words shattered a billion-dollar fairy tale. When Jeff Bezos reportedly said "too late," it didn't just end a marriage to Lauren Sanchez. It ignited a storm of questions about power, contracts, and what really happens behind the gilded doors of elite society. Was the Venice wedding a love story, or a strategy? Tonight, we unravel the whispers, the legal chess moves, and the high-stakes world where romance meets reputation, and nothing is ever as simple as it seems. 2 cold words echoed through a palace of glass and gold, and in that instant the fairy tale shattered not with a scream but with a whisper, because when the richest man on the planet looks across a room filled with chandeliers reflected in the dark waters of Venice and says "too late," it does not sound like heartbreak, it sounds like a verdict. And for Lauren Sanchez, those words were not simply the end of a romance, they were the beginning of a storm that would unravel reputation, alliances, and influence in ways few could have predicted. The wedding that once symbolized a new chapter alongside Jeff Bezos had been presented to the world as the ultimate union of glamour and power. Gondolas gliding beneath historic bridges, couture gowns tailored to perfection, cameras flashing like lightning across marble floors, and yet beneath the sparkle there were whispers of clauses and contingencies, of documents drafted long before guests arrived, of a prenuptial agreement built not merely to protect assets but to anticipate every possible scenario, because those who know Bezos describe a strategist, a man who approaches personal decisions with the same precision that once built Amazon into a global empire. And so as vows were exchanged and headlines celebrated romance, legal teams had already mapped contingencies. Insiders say the agreement contained strict provisions governing branding, public appearances, and financial independence, all designed to avoid conflicts and misunderstandings should circumstances change. And when circumstances did change, the response was swift. Assets reviewed, partnerships reconsidered, statements measured. The shift was subtle at first, invitations recalibrated, schedules adjusted, public narratives softened, and observers began asking, how could a celebration in Venice evolve into a lesson about influence and perception so quickly? The answer lies not in anger but in preparation, because powerful individuals often rely on structured agreements to reduce risk, and when personal relationships intersect with business empires, the lines can blur rapidly. The suspense in this story does not come from explosive confrontation but from silence, from unread messages, from postponed meetings, from the gradual awareness that something has shifted, and viewers watching from afar could feel it, the sense that beneath every polished photo there was a deeper negotiation unfolding that perhaps had been unfolding for months. And what makes this saga compelling is not scandal but strategy, not chaos but calculation. And as the days following the ceremony passed, speculation grew. Analysts discussed the role of comprehensive prenups in high-profile marriages. Public relations experts debated how image and autonomy intersect in partnerships where wealth and media attention are immense, and audiences leaned closer, wondering what would happen next, because when 2 figures of global visibility recalibrate their alliance, it sends ripples far beyond personal space into boardrooms, studios, and political circles. And still the most haunting element remains those 2 words, "too late," spoken without raised voices yet heavy with finality, leaving everyone to ask, was it about timing, about trust, about boundaries that had been clearly outlined long before the gondolas set sail? As details emerged, the focus shifted to the architecture of the agreement itself. Legal professionals explained that in relationships involving extraordinary wealth, contracts often include confidentiality standards, brand management expectations, and conflict resolution pathways, not as instruments of harm but as frameworks intended to prevent disputes from escalating. And yet, when applied in real time, these frameworks can feel overwhelming, particularly when the world is watching. Insiders described a document drafted over many months, refined with care, designed to clarify rights and responsibilities so that both parties understood the terrain. And when analysts examined similar high net worth agreements, they noted clauses addressing independent ventures, media engagement, and intellectual property usage, because in a digital era where influence translates to revenue, clarity becomes essential. The suspense for viewers lies in the gap between intention and perception. Was the contract a shield, or did it feel like a cage? The truth may depend on perspective, and that ambiguity fuels conversation across entertainment, journalism, and legal commentary. Meanwhile, public appearances became rarer, statements carefully curated, and the social landscape adjusted not out of malice but out of caution, because in elite circles association carries weight and individuals often reassess alignment. When narratives shift, it is less about exile and more about recalibration, about risk management in environments where headlines move markets and still audiences sensed the emotional dimension, the human reality behind structured documents, because beyond clauses and compliance are two people navigating expectations and scrutiny at extraordinary scale, and when changes occur they do so under a magnifying glass, every silence analyzed, every schedule change interpreted as signal, and within that atmosphere the phrase "too late" lingered, not as condemnation but as closure, a recognition that certain crossroads once passed cannot be revisited, and what viewers must remember is that contracts cannot dictate feelings, they can only define outcomes, and so is speculation. Intensified commentators emphasized due process, the importance of measured language and respect for privacy, because YouTube audiences value drama but platforms value responsibility, and telling this story requires balance, acknowledging intrigue without assuming motives, recognizing complexity without amplifying rumor, and that tension between curiosity and caution becomes the heartbeat of the narrative, encouraging viewers to stay until the final frame, not for scandal but for understanding of how power structure and personal choice intersect in the highest tiers of society. Beyond the immediate circle, the ripple effects extended into broader conversations about modern relationships and autonomy. Analysts on media panels discussed how social branding intersects with marriage, how independent careers adapt when joined to global empires, how transparency can coexist with confidentiality, and the story transformed from a singular event into a cultural case study. Universities referenced it in business ethics classes, public relations firms dissected its messaging strategies. Financial planners cited it when advising clients about comprehensive agreements, and through all of it the names Jeff Bezos and Sanchez remained at the center, not as caricatures but as complex figures navigating extraordinary circumstances, because when influence reaches planetary scale every decision echoes and audiences stayed engaged, because each day seemed to reveal another layer, not explosive but intricate, a reminder that the most compelling dramas are often quiet negotiations unfolding behind closed doors. The gondolas of Venice became symbolic in commentary pieces, a metaphor for journeys that appear serene while currents move beneath, and yet through measured statements and professional restraint both parties signaled forward motion rather than conflict, emphasizing respect for privacy and focus on individual projects, and that shift redirected the narrative from confrontation to evolution, suggesting that perhaps the true story was not about destruction but about divergence, about two trajectories recalibrating after intersecting at remarkable height, and still viewers leaned in waiting for confirmation that the chapter had indeed closed, because suspense thrives in uncertainty, and uncertainty lingers when public figures choose discretion over disclosure. In the final phase of this unfolding drama, attention returned to legacy. What does it mean for leaders of immense enterprises to balance personal life with institutional stewardship? How do public figures protect both reputation and authenticity in a digital landscape that archives every gesture? Experts reminded audiences that prenuptial agreements are legal instruments designed to provide clarity, not punishment, that silence can signify professionalism rather than strategy, that recalibration can be mutual rather than unilateral. And as the weeks passed, new projects emerged, philanthropic initiatives continued, business milestones advanced, demonstrating that life beyond headlines persists. And perhaps the most powerful revelation is that narratives built on assumption rarely capture full truth, because behind every contract are conversations, behind every silence are decisions shaped by advisors' emotions and long-term vision, and so the suspense resolves not with spectacle but with perspective, understanding that relationships at extraordinary levels of visibility require extraordinary structure, that when boundaries are defined outcomes feel decisive, that too late may simply mean the moment for reconsideration has passed. And as audiences reach the end of this story, they recognize that the true lesson lies not in scandal but in preparation, in the reminder that power amplifies both opportunity and consequence, and that in a world fascinated by glamour the most consequential moves are often the quietest ones, made long before chandeliers sparkle above Venetian waters. In the end, this story is Less about conflict and more about clarity about how structure and foresight shape outcomes in relationships lived under global scrutiny. The phrase "too late" resonates because it captures the finality that can arrive when preparation meets turning point, yet it also invites reflection on responsibility, communication, and the complex balance between love, autonomy, and legacy within the highest tiers of influence. As viewers, we are drawn to spectacle, but what endures is the understanding that power demands planning, that privacy deserves respect, and that every high-profile union carries layers unseen by cameras. The gondolas have moved on, the headlines have softened, yet the conversation continues, reminding us that in worlds where wealth and visibility converge, the real drama is rarely loud. It is measured, strategic, and ultimately human. As this story settles into the archives of celebrity headlines and elite lore, what lingers is not outrage, not accusation, but a deeper reflection on how power and partnership collide when lived under a global spotlight. The union of Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez was never going to be ordinary. When influence operates at the scale of global corporations and media empires, even personal milestones carry institutional weight. Every appearance becomes messaging. Every silence becomes interpretation. Every agreement becomes architecture for the future. What makes this saga compelling is not a single phrase or rumored turning point, but the reminder that at extraordinary levels of wealth and visibility, relationships are rarely insulated from strategy. Legal frameworks, public relations planning, and long-term brand protection are not afterthoughts, they are foundations. In many ways, this story reflects a broader truth about modern power dynamics. Love may be emotional, but legacy is structural. And when legacy is involved, preparation is constant. The wedding in Venice symbolized glamour, optimism, and a merging of worlds. Yet behind the chandeliers and camera flashes existed the same realities that define any high-profile partnership: negotiation, clarity, boundaries, and risk management. For audiences watching from afar, it felt like a dramatic rise and sudden recalibration. But in circles where billion-dollar enterprises intersect with personal life, recalibration is often part of the design. Agreements are drafted not because failure is expected, but because unpredictability is inevitable. And so, when the narrative shifted, it did so with the quiet precision that defines leadership at the highest levels. There were no explosive press conferences, no public spectacle. Instead, there was restraint. Projects continued. Business operations advanced. Public messaging remained measured. That restraint speaks volumes. It suggests that even when personal chapters close, institutional stability remains paramount. For Lauren Sanchez, the journey forward becomes one of independent identity. Public figures evolve. Careers pivot. Influence adapts. History has shown that reinvention is not only possible in Hollywood and media, it is often inevitable. And for Jeff Bezos, whose professional life has always revolved around long-term vision, the episode reinforces a consistent pattern. Decisions are rarely impulsive, and transitions are rarely chaotic. They are structured, intentional, and aligned with broader strategy. What viewers should take from this story is not speculation, but perspective. In a digital era where every relationship is scrutinized and every headline amplified, it is easy to mistake silence for drama or structure for severity. Yet the reality is often more complex and more human. Two individuals navigating immense visibility must balance personal emotion with public consequence. That balance is delicate, and when it shifts, the effects echo widely. Perhaps the most powerful takeaway is this: power magnifies everything. It magnifies romance. It magnifies conflict. It magnifies perception. But it also magnifies responsibility. Contracts, boundaries, and communication are not signs of distrust, they are tools designed to manage scale. And when scale reaches global proportions, those tools become essential. The phrase that seemed to define this narrative, "too late," ultimately represents a universal truth. In life, timing matters. Decisions accumulate. Boundaries once crossed cannot always be reversed. Yet endings are not erasures. They are transitions. And transitions, especially at the highest levels of society, are rarely loud. They are deliberate. As the Venetian lights dim and the headlines gradually give way to new stories, what remains is a case study in modern influence. A reminder that behind glamour there is governance. Behind celebration there is structure. And behind every public union there are private negotiations designed to protect futures on both sides. The world may move on to the next spectacle, but this chapter leaves behind a lasting lesson. In realms where wealth, media, and legacy intersect, nothing is accidental. Not the rise. Not the recalibration. And not the silence that follows.